This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 358 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's topic is solo travel for women. Firstly, I'd like to pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast on a very rainy, wintry day. Now, first up, this might be an episode that's full of women who travel solo, but the benefits they talk about definitely relevant to anyone. It's just that as women, there are often a few more risks in travelling on your own, and some of my guests mention this. But please listen on regardless of your gender. I'm sure you'll enjoy the stories. I have done a small amount of solo travel, not tons, but I've really enjoyed it. And once my kiddo is older and doesn't want to travel with me anymore, sob, might happen one day, then I am looking forward to the chance to do more of it. There's a few reasons, a few particular themes that come up several times in this episode. I won't spoil them yet, that make solo travel really attractive to me. So let's get started with my first guest, Heidi Brown. Heidi's done a lot of solo trips and thinks that they have one particular advantage.
I love solo travel. I didn't realize how much I loved solo travel until I started traveling with other people at first. and then I realized I love my friends, however, and I want to pick the hotel. And I'm an introvert. I'm a kind of a proud introvert. I actually wrote a whole book called The Introverted Lawyer because I think that introverts bring a lot to every interpersonal interaction, but we're also kind of quirky. So in the mornings, for instance, I want to just be quiet and make my pot of coffee or a cup of coffee. I like to journal in the morning, and I also like to exercise on trips because then I want to eat and drink everything in sight. So I found that when I was traveling a lot with other people, my schedule that helps me maintain my mental health on trips was constantly getting knocked off kilter. Yeah. So I started doing these trips alone. I've booked trips to go see U2 concerts by myself. I've just booked, I wanted to go to Iceland just because I wanted to swim in the Blue Lagoon. And I just want to do that by myself, especially for shorter trips. I feel totally comfortable going by myself. And I feel like it's such a way to empower us to realize we can spend time alone and we can figure things out alone. And even if we make mistakes, sometimes I feel like, not a dangerous mistake, but sometimes it's the mistakes in a trip traveling by myself that I learn the most about, or I turn down a different street and I get a little bit lost, but then I see the most epic piece of graffiti or street art that I never would have seen if I'd been chatting with a friend or we'd taken the right path or whatever. Or I have this whole strategy for finding restaurants in places when I'm by myself. Like normally when I travel with people, if they're hungry, they just want to choose the first spot to eat. Yeah. But I will walk miles and miles and kilometers to find the perfect place to eat. And I choose it based on the font.
Okay, tell me more.
I have a foolproof system that if you're into, I'm a writer, so I like typeface and fonts and letters and words. And if you avoid restaurants that have photos of food, laminated, glossy photos of food, avoid those. Just do not go there. Yeah. But if you search for font, restaurants that have really cool letters on their doors or their signs, or you look at their menu and it's just this really cool font, you cannot go wrong. That food is good because those people have taken the time to care about what typeface they choose. And it has never failed me. I love that strategy. I also look for other things like cute decor, quirky things like, the silverwares in a painted tin can, or they've fresh flowers in an inkwell or something like that. So if the restaurant has taken time to make their little added flares interesting, I usually find that the food is really good as well.
That makes absolute sense. Yeah. But I imagine if you're traveling with a group of friends and they're hungry and you're like, no, the font's wrong, they're probably They're probably not that happy with you. So
no, I am usually the outcast in a group trip because I am like, no, we must walk 20 more minutes. I promise we'll find something. And everyone just wants to eat.
Yeah. I'm going to try your font trick, though. I love that idea. It makes absolute sense. There's total logic behind it. And it sounds like a delightful way to wander as well. Wander a bit further than the main tourist track and find something delicious.
Definitely. And I used to I told myself, so I am a real stickler for ritual or routine on travel to make sure that I don't feel lonely or feel depressed or feel anxious when I'm traveling alone. So I like to do rituals in the morning, have my coffee, do my journal, definitely get some exercise in. And then the rest of the day, if I'm on vacation, if I'm not there for work, I just call it my walkabout, I guess. And I will just wander. And being able to do that solo, you can just be pulled in different directions. A city like Rome, I look at the street signs because it's not organized. Like, it's not a grid like New York. Yeah. It's a maze. And I'll look at the different, the Italian words on the street signs. And for like the word dolphin, Delfini, I'll be like, ooh, that sounds interesting. I'll turn down the Delfini street. And then another sign will take me a different direction. And you really can't do that in groups, but you totally can do that alone. And being smart and being safe and not doing anything too risky. But I've discovered, again, like the font restaurants that way, little cute boutique stores that I never would have found on a list anywhere. And it just gives you, again, it empowers you to feel like, yes, I can do this. And it's interesting. And some days everything is sort of a bust and you don't find anything super fascinating. But most of the time you do if you just give yourself that freedom to walk alone.
I really agree with Heidi that the ability to be just more spontaneous, it's so much easier and can be so much fun when you're traveling solo and can make all the decisions yourself. I do really love that aspect. When I was traveling with my son when he was a little kid, then I could easily still make all the decisions and just say, hey, you're 4 years old, this is what we're doing. But now that he's a teenager, he's 15, he has a lot more opinions. So it's a lot less like traveling solo. And I am definitely going to try out Heidi's suggestion of choosing restaurants by their font. I love this tip and I really want to test it. It makes some sense. Now, my next guest today is Kaila Yu. Now, a funny story, when Kaila reached out to come on the podcast recently, I thought I'd actually met her online before, but then I realised that was because her name was familiar. About 5 years back, I had interviewed her then bandmate and good friend, Kiki Wong. So it was not the same person, but closely connected. Kaila actually surprised me by giving me an update that Kiki now plays with the Smashing Pumpkins, no less. So I think that's pretty amazing. Anyway, Kaila and I chatted about some more advantages of solo travel, and she has another great tip.
So I travel alone a lot for work, and I go to some of the most romantic places in the world by myself. And I love it, actually. I think sometimes the waiter gives me a curious look, like, what is she doing? Like when I was in Bora Bora, I was staying at the Four Seasons, which is like your quintessential honeymoon place, and everybody is walking around coupled up with their flower crowns and stuff, and I'm just wandering around happily by myself. But there's something about it. It's almost like if you are an introvert like me, everyone kind of leaves you alone. It's not, if you go to a social hotel and people aren't in couples, then there's a little more socializing or people might be hitting on you. But this does not happen in Bora Bora. Yeah.
I never thought about it from that angle. That's quite
yeah, I would recommend if you're a solo female. That's one of the biggest concerns for solo female travels is harassment for men at different destinations. So I would really recommend romantic hotels because nobody is going to harass you when they're in a couple, hopefully.
Well, especially honeymooners, surely not.
Yeah, honeymooners.
That would be really bad if they did.
That would be really bad.
That's a fabulous tip. I never thought of that. And probably a lot of people think, oh, why is she alone in this place? Probably a bad story. So they just leave you alone completely. So
she got left at the altar, so she decided to come on the honeymoon by herself.
Yeah, exactly. So we better not spoil our trip talking to her. So
But you have to have no shame. Like, I just don't like, I'm somebody who takes photos of myself in public because, like, sometimes I'm traveling by myself. It's just like, if you feel self-conscious, then it may be a little more difficult. But if you just don't care like me, then it's great.
What else do you like about traveling solo?
Well, there's one thing. I've been to, like, the Four Seasons, Bora Bora is my favorite. And I've been there many times by myself, but I would love to bring a partner there at some point. You know, that would be really, really nice. There's something to be said for solo travel and just not having to, like, compromise on anything or then just do whatever you want. Because, like, once I went with an ex and he was sensitive to street food and I was like, all I want to eat is street food. And then we had to compromise and eat at some tourist places that were safer, you know, so that, like, kind of ruined half the trip because I literally travel for the food.
Right.
So I want to try every street food stand I bump into. And yeah, that really held me back.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes. Compromising is awful when you, I mean.
Yeah, some things are okay to compromise on. That one thing I did not want to compromise on, really. I did compromise on it. But you know, there's some things like, oh, if he wants to go see a museum and I don't really, that's an okay compromise that I don't mind as much because it's not taking anything away from my experience.
Your taste buds are not missing out.
Yeah.
Yep, compromising can be tricky and sometimes you really don't want to compromise when you're traveling. I completely get this. So that's definitely an advantage of solo travel, the lack of compromising. And this tip of Kaila's about going as a solo traveler to honeymoon places and you just get left alone nicely is genius. I might try that one day myself. My next guest is Renae Ninneman, and we chatted briefly about some of the benefits of traveling solo when it comes to meeting people.
It's always important to, like, connect. You want to also meet some people, and sometimes when you're solo traveling, you meet the people that are from that country, and sometimes you meet people from completely other countries. It's kind of random, like, who you're going to meet and what culture they'll be from, but it's a really wonderful experience regardless. I think probably my most whimsical experience solo traveling was I went to a music festival kind of out in the countryside in South Korea and met a bunch of different people from a bunch of different countries. There was a Swedish guy that we were hanging around with, you know, this big group of people. And we were both, like, heading back to the train station. And he's like, I don't really want to go back. It's kind of nice here. And I'd like to stay for a little bit longer. I'm like, me too. Let's do that. And so we just, like, walked down to the river and he had a hammock and I, like, took a nap next to the lake with, like, no pillow or anything. I just fell asleep by the river. And we just sort of, like, swam and chatted. And then we took the train back to Seoul. And that was it. You know, like, it was a very whimsical, fun experience where I met tons of different people from lots of different countries. And we all hung out in South Korea, in the countryside. I stayed in touch with him for, like, a little bit afterwards, just, like, friendly, casual relationship. He was working on farms throughout Asia. He was, like, moving from farm to farm. It was a really interesting fellow. So things like that, you know, just really whimsical, like, I don't want to go back yet. Hey, me neither. Let's just sit down by the river for the afternoon and go back later. So, you know, that kind of stuff, like, that's really fun. Gave me the opportunity to learn a little bit more about somebody else's lifestyle. It gave me an opportunity to meet somebody from another culture. And so, like, being open to those sort of experiences, and they don't all have to be, like, as, like, random and whimsical as that perhaps, but just being open to talking with people and listening to people and coming in with, like, a genuine cultural humility. Like, tell me about your country. Like, what is it like there? And how do people, and my questions are always like, I want to know about, like, how do you treat your elders in your culture? I don't know. I want to learn about everything. And I think it's easier when you're long-term in a country because you have more time. But I think if you're really motivated, you're really interested, you can learn a lot about the world.
I think that's so true. And I think when you're on your own, it's that much easier, isn't it? To, like your example with the Swedish guy, you know, if you're in a group, you don't get those chances to have those more in depth. You can, but it's easier. If there's just solo travelers meet up and you have these conversations, it's a whole different scenario, I think.
Yeah.
I've had similar random meetings like this myself, and I do love learning all about other people's cultures and habits and everyday life. And traveling solo definitely makes these encounters even more likely, I think. Now, my final guest today is Chelsea Gruber. We'd been talking earlier in our recording about solo travel sometimes being riskier, but she was happy to report that she'd never found herself in any particularly difficult situations on her solo travels.
Yes. So I was telling you, I don't have any major stories, which is a good thing. And I think the reason that I don't have any major safety stories is because I'm so well prepared as far as safety in solo traveling. So, and I mean, it starts from the planning phase. Like after my Paris marathon, I'm going down to Faro, Portugal for a few days just for some R&R.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. So that'll be my mindful portion of the trip. You know, don't book any tours, don't make any plans, just a few days alone. And I would love to just find a little villa remote on some cliff, turn off all my technology, but I know better than that. As a solo traveler, I can't do that. And so it starts from the beginning. So I found a Airbnb in a well-populated area, condo with other, and central to the city, walking distance to everything, so it starts, that's first thing is as far as safety goes. As much as I would love to be in a remote villa on some cliff somewhere, that's not realistic for a solo female traveler. And then when I get there, or before I leave, one of the main things that I always do is I share my itinerary with my mom. And so she knows, oh my gosh, that poor woman, I've put her through. She I don't think she sleeps at all every time I travel by myself. I've taken years off her life.
I bet she's also very proud, though.
She is. And so I always share my itinerary with her. And then, we always have daily check-ins. She always watches my dog whenever I leave. So I'll drop my dog off. And so the rule is whenever I check in with her, she'll send me a photo of my dog. So the more I check in with her, the more photos of my dog I get.
That's a great system. I love it.
It works out well. And so those are the two main things before I leave. And then once I get there, it's always very important. I never share my itinerary with anyone else. I mean, even if I meet, great people, at dinner or at the bar or something, I'm never going to say, oh, I'm staying in that condo up on the hill, or I'm staying in that hotel. Like I never share any of that information. So that's a big one.
Smart.
And then I think the main thing, and I think this goes back to just everything that we've been discussing, you get so many gut feelings traveling alone. And the more you travel alone, the more you learn to trust your instincts. Like I said, you just know yourself better, and you can just learn to read situations a little bit better. I mean, I've never had knock on wood, I've never had an experience in another country where I feel like I've met someone who's dangerous in any way. I mean, I think I'm probably more in jeopardy in the United States than I am in anywhere else, to be honest.
Maybe.
More unsafe here than anywhere. But I just think that everywhere I travel, people are always just so lovely. And so I always give people the benefit of the doubt at first, but it's just, setting a boundary. It's like I said, just not telling anyone where you're staying. Oh, and I always tell if I'm staying at a hotel or I'm on tour, I always let the hotel concierge know that, hey, I'm traveling by myself. So they know if I don't come back one night, just to keep an eye on me. And they're usually really lovely about that as well.
Nice.
And then I never in my 20s, I'll admit, I did have some party nights for sure. Now I know better in my 30s. So no more going out on my own. But what I did used to do, if I did want to have more of a good time solo trip, is I would go on a group tour.
Right.
They have a bunch of those. So I would do G Adventures, or I think it's Intrepid Travel. Yeah. And so, you could meet a bunch of other 20-somethings, and then you guys just have a good time. Everyone's solo traveling. So if you want to
but there's still someone looking out for you if you, yeah.
Exactly. And so you're in a group. But yeah, never nowadays, once the sun goes down, I'm back at home. So I try to plan everything accordingly, so I'm not out walking around at night, lost, trying to find my hotel, trying to get back home, trying to find a taxi. So it's just about being prepared and planning everything ahead as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. For a long time, I've traveled not solo, but with my son. And so he's now 14 and 6 foot. But, of course, for many years, he was a little kid. And so it sort of feels the same as solo traveling, but also with this added responsibility of keeping this child safe. And so a lot of those things sound very familiar. And it's really interesting. The last time we traveled, during last year, even he was already taller than me. And I'm not short. It was funny how much different it felt to when he was, 6 or 8 and he was just a little kid. Whereas now I feel like I've got this big strapping, young man next to me, and it already feels a lot different because I'm like,
now you have your protection. Yeah, nobody's gonna mess with you.
Yeah, and as awful. I mean, and he's only 14,
and he probably loves it too. He's probably like, oh, I get to protect my mom.
Yeah, I think he probably does. Yeah, but it's so unfair because he's 14, he's so young, but he's male,
6 feet
and it really
at
helps.
14 years old.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it is crazy. But he's a bloke, and so automatically he's that bit safer than us as women, which is really unfair. But it's life, isn't it? And we have to be aware of it and be careful.
I know. I do get frustrated. I mean, if I wasn't a woman, like the amount of more things that I would go do on my own, go do by myself. Like I said, I would just go stay in remote locations, throw all my technology in the ocean. Nobody would ever hear from me, but unfortunately, that's not an option.
No, it's not realistic. Well, I'm very glad to hear you've never had anything go badly wrong as a solo traveler, so that gives everybody hope, because I know some people are really concerned about traveling solos.
No, and I mean, even places where people are like, oh, that's an unsafe city. I mean, I've been to Istanbul in Turkey, and I've been to Rio, and those are two cities where people are like, oh, you shouldn't travel alone. The nicest people I've ever met. The most gracious, wonderful local humans. Like I said, the only people that scare me are American men. Like they're the scariest out of anyone, in my opinion.
And I think you're right. Using your gut instinct and just being sensible makes a big difference.
Yeah, planning ahead and I think women's intuition is pretty good. I mean, that's probably why, because when we get into these situations, we just have to listen to our gut a little bit better. But no, everyone in other countries, I mean, they're just all so wonderful. Luckily, like I said, never had any sort of issues.
Yeah, I think trusting your gut instinct can go a long way when you're traveling, regardless of your gender, along with following some sensible personal rules and doing enough research to be prepared for the place you're going to be. And then all those other wonderful benefits that our guests mentioned have come into play. Solo travel is awesome. If you haven't tried it, I really, really recommend it, because I don't want to travel solo every time, because some things I do want to share with my family or friends, etc. But as we've mentioned, the ability to just do exactly what you want, not compromise, and some of the extra benefits of just spending time on your own, I think make it really, really worthwhile. So, thank you very much for listening to episode 358 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Some links so you can find out more about my guests. I chatted first with Heidi Brown. You can see her website, heidikristenbrown.com, and I'll leave a link to her new memoir, The Map I Draw, a memoir of travel as a passport to self. I think the title's fairly self-explanatory and super interesting. I chatted then with Kaila Yu. You can find out more about Kaila's current work at kailayu.com, and she has a new memoir out too. It's called Fetishized, A Reckoning with Yellow Fever, Beauty and Feminism, which I absolutely have put on my to-read list. I then chatted with Renae Ninneman, who has a business in cultural training and cultural competence. You'll hear more from Renae in some future episodes. Very interesting stuff. Her business is Going Beyond Tourism at goingbeyondtourism.com. And finally, I chatted again with Chelsea Gruber, and you can find out more about Chelsea at chelseasolotravels.com, or look her up on Instagram, Chelsea Solo Travels. All of these links and more will be in the show notes, along with links for the Facebook and LinkedIn groups for Thoughtful Travellers, or just hop into those platforms and search for Thoughtful Travellers. And don't forget to come along and join the Thoughtful Travellers newsletter at Substack, thoughtfultravel.substack.com. Lots of interesting stuff there of late. I am thoroughly enjoying being in Substack. It's like blogging 15 years ago. So much fun, and a good chance to put some more of my thoughts on, not on paper, but in words that you can read rather than listen to. So all of this and more in the show notes at notaballerina.com/358. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.